ways to compensate them for their hard work. So in particular, I'd like to thank Agora News. They're the ones that are recording the entire event that we'll be able to have on the website. All of the pitches, all the presentations, all the speeches will be available on their website, on YouTube, and also on our website, which we'll be launching shortly. I'd like to thank Christopher Pomeranian of Active Venture Partners. He's not here right now, it seems, but he's offered that the winner of the Venture Day will be offered a possibility to participate directly as a finalist in an event that they're going to be launching in April, a Venturepreneurs event, and be able to compete for a prize of $250,000 investment. Also, Max Oliva of Hub, who says that they will give to the winner of the Venture Day and the two finalists the possibility of free accommodations or installations during a period of up to 6 months. Diego Soro, who will help the winner to try and get public financing. Diego was the person who yesterday moderated the panel on public financing. Well, he'll make sure that he tries to help whoever wins the Venture Day to get public financing. Ignacio Costas from RCD, Asesoras Legales y Tributarios, legal advice. Basically, they'll offer to the winner of the Venture Day, I can't remember right now how many hours, but I think it's 20 hours of free legal advice to help with the setting up of the company, et cetera, all of those first initial problems that you may have, particularly things like how to deal with your, the other shareholders, do the shareholders agreement, all those kind of nasty things you have to do at the beginning. The winner will receive free legal advice and help in that. And finally, Antonio Diaz, of the Director General of the Fundación del Parque Científico de Madrid. And basically they're also offering to one of the finalist teams the possibility of staying within the Parque Científico, which is just about 15-20 minutes away from here. Free installations as well during a period, I think, of 6 months. So first of all, I'd like to thank all of those different sponsors. We'll put their different logos and all that kind of stuff on our website to thank them officially for the different things that they're offering. And I'd like to also thank all the people who came from outside of Spain to join us. So we have Michaela Woods, who I met last week at the Venture Lectures from the Oxford Cambridge Entrepreneurs Organization. She's over here, so anyone who wants to do some networking with some British people, that would be an opportunity right there. I'd like to thank also Tobias Shermer, who is an alumnus of IE, and he's now working with Bertelsmann, who's also come from Germany to participate as a member of the judging panel. Joaquin Tare, who's not here right now, who also helped us kind of get in touch with the different international investors, one of whom is Sophie Dingerville from Iris Capital in France, and she'll also be a member of the judging panel later. And finally, of course, the next speaker that we're going to have, which is Denis Bemman. And Denis, I think in networking is really, really important because Denis and I actually met at a networking conference. I think it was the Web 2.0 conference in Berlin. And basically, people said, there's this guy who's here. He started this social network called StudiVZ. It's like the biggest social network in Germany. I think at that point they had about 10 to 12 million users. And I think they had just recently sold a company to the Holtzbring Group for, well, the media and Wikipedia say about 100 million. I've never asked Denis exactly how much he got from it, but basically the idea that they sold the company for a lot of money. And so since then, Denis decided that he wanted to be a business angel, and so we met at the conference and then kind of told him, like the same thing I tell all of you guys in the classes, well, just do a quick pitch. So basically I see this guy, I'm like, hey, you're Denis, I heard about you, I'm Gary, I have this company, can we talk to you for 30 seconds? And then eventually he invested in our company. And so now Denis is a partly business angel, partly traveling the world, partly doing a lot of different things that I'll let him explain for himself. But basically what he's going to share with us right now is a little bit what the experience was like setting up this social network that started to grow really, really quickly. What the process was like of getting the initial users, and then what it was like then to sell your company, etc. So without saying much more, the only other thing I'd like to say again, since we didn't have a chance to do it yesterday, is I'd like to thank Carmen Corais and David Marin and David Fogel, because basically all I do is come up with the ideas and then I leave it up to them to fill out the details and do all the administrative stuff. So none of this would have been possible without any of them. So let's give them a round of applause while since Carmen's outside, you can give her a round of applause when you see her outside. And with nothing more, I'll now invite Denis to give his presentation of how to create a $100 million company, I guess.
everybody. So I hope my slides are going to work. We just exported them from the Mac to the PC, and that's not always so easy. That's not mine. No?
No? No es de Juan.
No. That's how to create the next big thing. So the title of the presentation is actually from Gary, who said, let's call it How to Create the Next Big Thing. You know, I'm a marketing guy. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, the thing with next big things is that they are so hard to predict. So arguably, StudiVZ is quite a big thing, and I'm going to tell you how we did it. But the truth is that if I knew how to create the next big thing, I would do it all the time, and I would become a billionaire. But it's very hard to know what the next big thing is going to be. There are many people who do everything right, but what they do simply never becomes the next big thing. So I think the best way is to learn from mistakes other people have made, also to look at, of course, what has led to success, but that's not always a recipe to succeed as well. And these are my slides, just some images missing. Does anybody happen to have an adapter from mini DisplayPort to VGA?
No.
Why?
Dennis, maybe the idea is to convert PDF from your Mac.
Yeah. You can try that. Thank you. Yeah, so Gary already introduced me. My name is Dennis. I'm actually from a small town in Germany, but I moved to Berlin in '99 for my studies. And with some interruptions, I've mostly been there. This is my profile page in StudiVZ, social network. I just missed my notes. And since I'm speaking at a business school, I wanted to show you this. That's actually from '99 when I participated in an entrepreneurship course at my university, Humboldt University in Berlin. And we were asked to write a business plan. And our idea was a virtual consultant, a little guy that can walk around the website and tell people how to navigate and help them find the product they're looking for. Because at that time the web was still new to many people. And we thought that this might be an interesting product. In the end, we didn't found that company. So it remained an idea. We won some business planning competitions, and I learned a lot about how this thing, entrepreneurship, is supposed to work. But then we decided to remain in university, and I founded StudiVZ 6 years later. Okay. StudiVZ is actually 3 networks. We started with the one called StudiVZ, which was targeted towards students. And then at some point we realized that also people who were not students were interested in networking on our website. So we founded another one for high school students called SchülerVZ. Schüler means pupil in German. And later, because there are still more people interested, we founded one for basically everybody else, which is MeinVZ. And MeinVZ and StudiVZ are connected, so that means if you're a member of StudiVZ, you can have friends on MeinVZ and you can see their profile pages and so on. That's not possible yet with SchülerVZ because the laws about use protection are very strict in Germany and that's not so easy to do. We founded the company in 2005 in Berlin, and then we grew very rapidly. We didn't expect that. Of course, we thought it would be nice if it would become big, and our idea was if one day we would have maybe 1 million users, that would be great. So today it's 17 million more or less. And we found out that in 2006 we were the fastest growing website in Germany, which put us under lots of technical problems mainly. Because we were not prepared for that growth. And then we founded SchülerVZ, which became the fastest growing website in 2007, even faster than StudiVZ. And then we started MeinVZ in 2008. It's also pretty big now. There's a ranking in Germany called IVW, which is originally is coming from print, and they measure how many copies of newspapers or magazines are sold. And they also measure internet traffic, and according to that rating, we're now I think number 1, 3, and 5. They don't measure everything, so Google is not in there. It's also pretty big in Germany. They just measure German originated products. But it's just to tell you that this is pretty big. So if you have 17 million members and the population of a country is about 80 million, that shows that, because it's very targeted towards age, that almost all the young people are members. And StudiVZ is completely governed by German and EU laws, which is especially important in data protection, consumer protection, and use protection, because some competitors, especially from the United States, different laws apply there, and they do some things that we're not doing, and that's not always so good for the consumers. Just to have some numbers. Of course, on a social network website you can upload photos. There's about 1 billion of them right now, and 2 million new photos are uploaded every day. We have about 1 million discussion groups, and 15 million messages that are written every day. And the numbers on the bottom, I don't have up-to-date numbers since I'm not with the company anymore, but it's not that important. It's just to show that it's quite a big server farm these days. And in terms of usage, in Germany it's bigger than Facebook, and status updates it's much bigger than Twitter. If you look at reach, we're also ahead of TV. So these are popular TV channels in Germany, and if you look at that target group that we're in, it basically means that if you do advertising on the VZ networks, you can reach more people in a shorter time than if you do it on TV. And that, of course, is good for advertisers, which is good for us, because that's how we earn our money. And all kinds of big companies are using the VZ platforms to advertise. So, a good question is, how did everything happen? I'm going to show you some pictures. So, that's my co-founder Esan and I. And we started the whole thing in 2005. And the history before that is that when I was a high school student, I participated in a competition for young people called Jugendforscht, which is basically young researchers. You have to write papers and present them in front of a jury. And in that competition, I got to know many people who were very interesting, because they were interested in various things, not just one domain of science. And we thought it would be nice to stay in touch. But at some point, I think when you're 18, you're too old and you cannot participate anymore. So we decided to found a club to keep in touch. So basically it's a social network. It was more offline at the time, so we had congresses and so on, but it was the same idea. It was to get people in touch who share some interests and who want to keep that contact. And I also did all the IT for that club, so we made a website, and you could make a profile, you could upload a picture, you could put information about yourself, you could search for other people according to interests or science projects, and you could write each other messages and so on. We even had a simple newsfeed, so it's actually all the functions that social networks on the internet have today, just for a very limited target group. And my co-founder Esan, at that time did an internship at a company in the US. Actually, it was a US dependency of a German startup where you could print t-shirts. And he saw that people in America were using social networks on the internet, which was pretty new to Germany. And we talked about that and we said, let's do something like that in Germany. And because we were students, we made one for students. So we went to an internet cafe, and that's where we founded the company. It was all very crazy in that time. And then we met Lukas, the guy up here, who's an old friend of Essan's. He's now running his own VC, or angeling, he would probably say, company, Team Europe Ventures. And he gave us 5,000 euros at the time. That was our first seed capital. It's not that much if you have to pay people, but in the beginning we did more or less everything by ourselves, and we tried not to spend a lot of money because we didn't have much. And at some point we found out that we were not really complete yet, and there was somebody missing who would look into strategy and organization and finance and so on. And then we found Michael, the third guy, who became another member of the team. He came about 7 months later. And then we were complete, and we worked in a about 22 square meters apartment, residential apartment, where Essan was living in Berlin, because we didn't have an office. We didn't have money to pay an office. And we stayed there for about 7 months. Oh, and then some other funny things happened. So for example, there was this guy, Aaron Dessau. He was Germany's fastest student. I think with 19 or so, he graduated with a diploma, which is something like a master's degree. And he went to Harvard to do a PhD. And Essan read something about Aaron on in a magazine, and contacted him and said, hey, it's very interesting what you're doing. And he wrote back, yeah, it's also very interesting what you are doing. Can I invest in your company? And we said, well, this guy's a student. Does he know that there's a risk involved if you invest in startups? And he said, yeah, it has to work, it has to work. And so we agreed, well, if he's willing to invest money, why should we not take it? We just have to tell him that there is a chance that he might lose it. So I said, Aaron, you have to know, it's not like a savings account. And he said, yeah, it's going to be fine. And he gave us some money. And then we didn't stay much in touch with him until the acquisition, when he heard of us. So we were sitting in this 22 square meters apartment. I had a table like this from IKEA, and we worked more or less day and night because we had so many challenges to solve, technical ones, but in all kinds of domains. And that was very interesting. It was a lot of fun, but it was also very stressful. Some more pictures of the team. And then after more than half a year, I think it was about 7 months, or maybe 8, we finally got our first own office in an old industry building in Berlin that was partly destroyed by water. That's why it was very cheap. And there, it looked like this. One thing is that we're not a bank, so we can afford to be like we really are. And if you spend so much time working, it also has to be fun. I think if you sit in an office and you wear a suit and you adhere to all kinds of formalities, that's fine for 8 hours, but sometimes it gets boring. So we decided we want to have fun, and that's not going to limit our performance. It's just a nicer way of working. So that's what we did. And that's actually something that also our target group saw, because we posted some pictures and we were in touch with them. And they liked that. So for example, when people wrote us a message at 3 o'clock in the morning and they had a question about the website or something wasn't working, they got a reply back in a very friendly style, like you would speak to your friends, not like a company would communicate, at 4 in the morning. And they thought, that is so cool that these people reply. And I think that's also why we were perceived as real. And that's also an important aspect, because some products remain very anonymous, and that's what StudiVZ was not like that. And we did many funny things. So for example, we always had this box on the left side of the website that was meant for technical problems, because we had technical problems all the time in the beginning, and it was too hard to always change the website, the source code, to put in there, sorry, this is not working. So we had this box, and everybody in the company could enter text, and it would appear there for everybody to read. And if you build such a functionality, then people are going to use it, and there were all kinds of nonsense in there. So one day they wrote, it's the 3rd of October, that's a holiday in Germany, and we're working in the office. We want cake, can't you send us a cake? And then 2 hours later, a student from Charité in Berlin came and brought us a cake. And then we got another cake in the afternoon, and next day we even got a cake by mail from Mannheim. It wasn't that good anymore because it was pretty hot outside, but that was a proof of concept. And we thought that's pretty funny, so because we always played frisbee in the courtyard, and our frisbee landed on some roof. We wrote that we need another frisbee disc, and then some user came and brought us a basketball, how do you call it? The thing where you throw the basket, yeah? And he said, I didn't find the frisbee disc, but I brought you this basket, so sorry how we got a basket. And we thought that was pretty cool. Another thing is that one employee wrote in that box on the left side, if the site is slow, please call Toby, and his number is 17, I don't know. And that was a joke, of course, and Toby got so many calls within a minute, and he removed that from the website, but some people wrote down the number, and even months later, if there was some technical problem, people would call Toby, and he was not so amused about that. But people found that cool. Yeah, and on the right side you see our first conference room, McDonald's. As I said, the office was very small. We also didn't have a door that we could close, except from the front door. So if we wanted to talk and other people wanted to work, we always had to walk around the building, or we went to McDonald's. And we also did job interviews there. That was pretty cool. And there were some people who said, well, I have lots of references. I can go to, I don't know, a big consultancy and do important work, so I'm not going to some startup where I have job interviews at McDonald's. But there were other people who found that very cool, and they said, we like the way you're working and the way everything is very uncomplicated. And these were the people who made StudiVZ work in the end, and these were the people who were very creative and came up with new things. And that was exactly the crowd we were looking for. One guy, for example, that was an intern at that early time is Taylor Mingos, and he founded his own company now in North Carolina. It's called shoeboxed.com. They do receipt management, and it's pretty cool. I visited them recently, and their CFO was another intern of ours, and he basically has the same spirit in his new company, and it also proves to be successful so far. So they're now profitable, and it's pretty interesting to see. Then we decided we have to go international, because our reasoning was, if we can sit in Berlin and be successful in Cologne and in Munich and in Hamburg, why can't we be successful in Madrid, in Paris, and Warsaw? So we got teams from the respective countries and decided to translate the website. We were not able at that time to make one website that incorporates everything, and we were also afraid that we might face the same problems as that Google, what was it called, the social network from Google? Orkut, exactly. Yeah, Orkut has the problem that it's so flooded by Brazilians, and everything in it is in Portuguese, so people in the US don't really want to use it anymore. And we thought if we, because we already had lots of members in Germany, if we launched that in France, nobody would want to use it because it's all German. So we made new instances of the website and started them in 4 markets. Unfortunately it didn't work. I have another slide about that in a few minutes. But it was a pretty interesting time in the office because we got these teams, and nothing is cooler for somebody than to go to another country, to a city like Berlin, and work there as an intern. Yeah, we had a Spanish team, a French team, a Polish team, and an Italian team. And then it was a big mix of languages in the office. And then we even got an outsourcing partner in Ukraine because we couldn't find enough developers. So everybody was speaking different languages there. And we also found that it's difficult for people to come to a new city and find a place to live. So we rented apartments, and people could get rooms there. Everybody was also spending time together in their free time, and it was a lot of fun. We had lots of parties, and it was a very interesting time. And we found that some of our users were especially active, and we wanted to learn from them because we wanted to know what is it actually that makes people communicate on the website. because it's a new concept and not everybody gets it, but some people get it and they invite their friends and they write lots of messages and so on. So we contacted these heavy users and we asked them lots of questions, and they also told us many interesting things about their friends and how they are using the network. And a big partnership evolved from that. So these people were called the campus captains, and were kind of our ear in the universities because they knew what was going on there. And we thought, let's support them if we can. So we sent them t-shirts with this claim on it, gruschel mich, which is a word that we invented. That was also very interesting to the media, because we just invented a word and there was a function on the website where you could gruschel other people, and then they would get a message, you have been gruscheled by, I don't know. And because that word didn't exist, that was interesting and the media wrote about it. That was a good thing. And we also had these t-shirts, and that of course makes people curious if they find that new word. By the way, we translated that also to the other languages that we had websites in, and in Spanish it became to be abrachuchar. So gruschel mich in Spanish is abrachuchar. And there should be some people who are wearing these t-shirts. It's also in Polish, przywituj mnie. Yeah, it's just for some reason it was not intentional, but the German word sounds like some mix of to greet and to cuddle. So when the people translated that in other languages, somehow it became abrachuchar. And here's an excerpt from a newspaper that writes, a guy in his early 20s with squishy clothes opens the office door and shuffles in socks towards a conference room. Casually, the StudiVZ founders loll in their chairs and first make it clear that everybody's calling everybody here with their first names. So it sounds like lots of fun and people like that, but at some point you're faced with the challenge of keeping the balance between chaos and order. I'm not saying you have to move from chaos to order, because chaos has many positive attributes towards it. So, for example, all this creativity, the best way to evolve for it is if you have some kind of chaos. And although this own personality, this individuality can only emerge if you have some degree of chaos. But on the other hand, you also want to be efficient, you want to plan ahead, you want to know, for example, how much money you're spending, things like that. You want to have some standard and quality, and that's only possible with some degree of order. And I think the ideal way is to have a balance between the two. It's not to move from one to the other. And that's not so hard to do, because as the company grows, you're faced with all kinds of challenges, like business processes. How's something going to work in the company if there are not anymore 10 people, but maybe 50? Who's going to talk with whom about what? How do you want to release new source code? Then what is the company actually trying to achieve? In the beginning that was clear to everybody because we were a small team, but as the company grows, new employees are looking for what actually their job is, what they're trying to do. And so you have to think about putting that into words, which is not so easy, because you have to leave out some things, you have to include some things, and you have to think about what is it that makes the whole spirit. We were also faced with all kinds of legal issues, how to communicate to the media that had a massive interest in us at that time. And all these things get important. And you also don't want to lose this craziness and fun that you had. So that was a challenge for us, and I think we found a good way. But that's probably a big challenge for every startup that grows up. Yeah, another thing is that we didn't really have a business plan at the time. So we didn't know how much money we were spending. We just knew when it was gone and we needed new money. Fortunately, since we were developing very well, we were able to do financing rounds in very short intervals. So something like 6 weeks or so was normal for us, and we would raise new money. And that was valid because also the valuation has gone up, since every 3 weeks we doubled our user base. And so after 6 weeks we would have 4 times as many users, which justified a higher valuation. And it was just a very crazy and quick time. But if you ask questions in detail, we knew what we were trying to achieve, but we didn't have everything put in numbers. So, I mean, the key learning of that is that You can plan ahead, but if you know what you're doing, it's not so important to write everything down and make PowerPoint slides and make it look pretty. It's much more important to simply do it. And in the end, it always looks like there is this one product that made it, but in truth, there were many products like that also started at that time and that were new, and we faced lots of competition. So some people were asking, why was it VZ that made it? Why wasn't it some of the competitors? And I think one important reason is because VZ is really like that. So the image that was visible to the outside was actually true. We were not some big company that launched a new product and was trying to be cool or trying to be crazy. It was simply how things happened. There are some other aspects. The product, everything that we built into it, I tried to make it as simple as possible. It had to be social. That means a function is not only concerning one user, but communication between them. So for example, if you have something like news, I mean from what's happening in the world, that might be useful, that might be interesting, but it's not social because it's not about how people communicate with each other. So it's not a suitable feature in such a website. And it has to be useful. And many websites did things that were somehow interesting and fun, but they were not lasting. And after some weeks it got boring. So we tried to fulfill these three attributes. And if you look at our first 5,000 members, you see that it took quite some time to get them. So the company was founded, or the website went online in November 2005. And it took us 4 months to get 5,000 members. And if you ask some experts, they will tell you, you can do that much faster. You can do advertising and you can buy traffic and all this blah blah blah. And you can get 5,000 members in no time if you just are willing to spend some money. But I think it's important that we had an organic growth, because these people who signed up there were really people who wanted to use the website and who were interested in the product. And of course you can get people to visit your website, but if they are just tricked there, they don't know what to do, and that might even be harmful. So we had a competitor, for example. Actually, there's an interesting story behind it. This guy approached us and told us, I'm interested in your company, maybe I would like to invest, can you tell me more? And he asked us many questions, and we were very naive at the time and answered everything and told him how we did it. And then 2 weeks later he came up with his own product and he became a competitor. We were not so happy with that. But his network finally failed because he tried to get members as fast as possible, and they have, for example, promotional teams that went to schools and gave people little flashlights in exchange for their email addresses, and then people suddenly had accounts on this network and didn't know what to do with them. And these were negative examples, because if you sign up on that website, you would find there are many profiles without a profile picture, without information put into it, and that encourages people to do the same. So there was no activity and nothing really happening on these networks. And I think it was very important that we had the organic growth, even if it took longer, because the first members that we had were very good profiles in the sense of what the product is trying to do. And funny enough, if you compare that curve to our first 250,000, the curve looks very much the same. It's just different numbers on the axis. So you see that the growth is kind of exponential. And that was the next 4 months, and we got to 250,000. And that put us in front of very severe technical problems, and we had to work day and night, as I told you. Another reason for success, I think, is that you have well-defined target groups. So we didn't set it to build a social network for everybody, but we focused on high school students in the beginning. Later on, you can always make it bigger. So we decided to have several brands for that. Facebook obviously decided to have one platform for everybody, but they also started with a limited user base. And the thing is, if you have a limited base of customers, you can specialize more, and you can build functionality which is especially valuable to that target group, whereas if you do something for everybody, it's very generic, and it might not be interesting to people. I think a good example for focus also on the looking into what the functionality of the website is for example, the iPod. Because in the beginning, it was simply a music player, and there were other devices at that time that were doing many things, and you could take pictures, and you could do this and that, and nothing of these functions worked very well. And the iPod was just a music player, but it was excellent in that respect, and it won the market basically. And now iPods these days do all kinds of things, and you can also take pictures and browse the internet, and I don't know what, but they started with a very defined purpose, and I think this focus is pretty important. And there are also negative examples. We had another competitor that was launched by a big media company in Germany, an internet giant that owns email portals, and they also made big press announcements, which scared us a bit, because they said, we have 10 million euros invested into that, and we have a team of 30 people, and we are going to show these guys how to do social networks, and people are going to be using it. We're going to have millions of members, pensioners, families, students, kids, business people, and you can do everything on that site. You can do dating and business and family and friends, and you can use email and write articles and post videos and listen to music and so on. And people simply didn't get it because it was too much functionality and it was a too generic group of people that they targeted. And people simply didn't want to do dating and business at the same place. And well, the end of the story is that it didn't really work. Here we have an Alexa graph. The upper curve is ours, and the lower curve is that of the big media company who invested 10 million euros, and we spent a few $100,000, but we did something right that they didn't. So key learning is don't make a product that does everything for everybody. Try to focus if you can, and you can still open it up later. Yeah, about our internationalization. The key learning is that it didn't work because we did too much. We didn't focus, so I violated the own rule that I just formulated. We decided to go to 4 countries or 4 markets, and we chose them by different criteria. One was size. So for example, we didn't go to Holland, since putting up a website in Dutch language is just as much work as putting up one in Spanish. But there are many more people in the world who speak Spanish than Dutch. So Holland was too small. UK would have been interesting, but we had a strong competitor there, bemman. So we didn't do it in UK. Scandinavian countries, well, people speak very well English there. So many people were early adopters of English-speaking social networks. And we also looked at purchasing power. So like Spain, Italy, France are economies where you can also earn some money with advertising because people have more money to buy products than somewhere in Eastern Europe. But nevertheless, we decided to go to Poland because there were simply so many students in Poland, more than in Germany. Poland has more than 2 million students. Yeah, and we went to these countries, but I think we underestimate the cultural differences. If you sell cars, that's a different story because they work the same in every country. But if you have a product which is about how people communicate with each other and with their friends, that's very specific to a culture. And we simply underestimated that. And then suddenly also we were faced with demands from our international teams who told us, we need this, we need that. For example, the Polish team said, we have to incorporate the gadu-gadu messenger because everybody in Poland uses gadu-gadu and nobody outside of Poland knows even what it is. Or the Spanish team told us we need real-time communications because people in Spain, they want to chat, they want to talk in real time, and we had messages which were asynchronous, and we couldn't satisfy all these demands from the international teams. So I think we simply did too much, and the sad story is that these sites never really took off. We had a few 100,000 members in all of them. But in the end, we always had to ask ourselves, do we want to incorporate new functionality into our German site with more than 10 million users, or into the Polish site with 250,000 that don't use it as regular, because we had login rates in Germany of over 50% per day, which means that half of our user base logs into the website every day, whereas that was 12% or so in Poland. And at some point we had to decide that we want to focus on Germany, and we closed down the international sites. SchülerVZ is a social network for high school students. We started that in February 2007, and it developed very quickly. Our strategy how to gain members was, we told the students that were already on StudiVZ, do you have siblings? Do you have little brothers or sisters? You wouldn't want them to join your network here, right? So tell them to go to StudiVZ so they don't bother you here, and that worked. We did other things, like in StudiVZ we just walked around basically and told everybody to sign up on that website, and we bothered all our friends and told them every day, have you signed up yet? Have you uploaded a profile page? And so on. We did that also with StudiVZ. Yeah, but we were even surprised by how fast it took off. And another interesting point is that we didn't do traditional marketing, so we didn't really have promotional teams or big advertising and so on. It was mainly word of mouth, and we tried to amplify that effect. And we also printed some flyers and so on, but also our campus captains that I told you about with these Abbracciatemi t-shirts were not promoters that stood somewhere in a school and handed out flyers. It was more subtle than that. They were simply heavy users themselves, and they were convinced by the product, and they told people about it because they meant it, because they wanted to network with their friends on that website. And that, of course, that's much stronger. If a friend tells you, use that, I like it, and it's a good product, that's more convincing than if somebody gives you a flyer. And then MeinVZ, well, the idea was that StudiVZ was for students, but many people signed up in the end that were not students anymore. So we asked our users, what do you think, for whom should StudiVZ be? And the answer that we got, comprehensive, was it should be only for students and for all my friends who are not students. And that's hard to do. So our solution to it was to create another brand, another entry door to the social network, which was for not students, but to connect these networks to each other. So you could network between StudiVZ and MeinVZ. Another interesting aspect is how we watched the competition. As I told you, there were many other websites trying to do the same thing. And we found out that this viral, the critical mass that you need for viral distribution, so the website grows on its own, is very local. And if you reach a certain number, which was somewhere in the hundreds at one school, this viral growth starts to happen, and it's just it just takes off. But that is not somewhere in the whole country. It's for each school different, for each school separately. So when we watched the competition, we looked at cities or schools, and we tracked these numbers, and we did searches and found out how many people do they have in Hamburg, how many people do they have in Kassel, and then we had an Excel sheet that came out of that, and wherever they had half as many as we did, it was yellow. Where they had 75% of what we had, it was red. And then we focused on these schools and tried to find active members and on our own website and try to support them. And eventually, there are these search limitations. So search only returns, for example, 300 matches, and it tells you there are more than 300 people. So it's not possible anymore if a website has more than 300 members to track how many they really are. So we looked at first names, and we found out that, for example, 2% of the male population have the first name Christian. And then we simply searched for Christian on these other websites, and we multiplied that by 50, and we derived how many people they would have. We did that with different first names, and we got numbers that were very close, so that allowed us to track how many users they had. And then all kinds of funny things happened. So for example, there was this one group of people who wanted Nogachok back. Nogachok was an ice cream that was sold when I was in high school, and somehow it disappeared from the market because it was pulled from it. I don't know if it was not successful. And there were people who said, we want this ice cream back. And they founded a group, and they made a petition and wrote to Langnese, who produces it, and it actually came back, and you can buy it now in the stores. Some people said that Langnese launched that themselves. I don't know if they did. I think probably not, but if they did it very well. Another learning is that all kinds of experts told us you cannot do a website in red because it's not going to be successful. Websites have to be gray or blue, but not red. It's just red by coincidence because I had to use some color when I programmed it, so I used red. And I thought, well, if we decide on a color, we can still change it. but we never made that decision. It simply remained red forever. And it was very successful. So the experts were proved wrong in that point, and then when we launched SchülerVZ, we made it pink. And we thought, if it can work in red, it can also work in pink. And then the experts told us, no, that's not going to work because you target high school students there, and I mean, they are adolescents, and you cannot get young boys to sign up on a website that is pink, because pink is a girl's color. But we thought one step further, and we thought that it's nice for the girls because they are used to playing with Barbie and so on, and everything is pink. So they have this website which is pink, and they think they can sign up. And if the girls go there, the boys go where the girls already are, and it worked very well in pink. And after some time, we were also sued by Facebook, actually in 3 places. One was San Jose in California, and the other 2 were, of course, in Germany. And Facebook basically, the reason why they attacked us was that they said they invented social networking. They invented the concept that you stay in touch with your friends on the internet and you exchange communication. And that was another point that they could state in a German court, because German law doesn't forbid that. Intellectual property law is a bit more complex in the US, but they figured out that they also had to sue us in Germany if they wanted to do something against us, and they couldn't win in the market. So they said with the claim that we stole source code from them. And that's a very hard accusation, because stealing source code is highly criminal, and it would mean that you either have to bribe some employee or hack into the servers and so on. Of course, we didn't do that. We programmed everything by ourselves. So we said, well, let the court compare. We give the court our source code, and if Facebook does the same, then a neutral third person can compare and can find if there are similarities in the source code. And Facebook said, no, they're not going to look at our source code. So in the end, Facebook lost that case, and they had about 14 points that they complained, and they lost in all these 14 points in a court in Cologne. And so in the end, we made an agreement to drop these other cases, and now basically acknowledging to each other that what we're doing is right, and there's no more fights between the companies. And that's of course good, because they were also suing me personally, and it's not so nice to have such a big company suing you for millions and saying you stole things from them. So I'm glad. Some other lessons we have learned. About hiring, I discovered, well, in the beginning I thought, I know what I'm doing, and if I can find people who are good enough to do the job, that's fine, because not everybody needs to be excellent. But that's probably the wrong attitude, because I discovered that one of the best decisions I made in my entrepreneurial life was hiring excellent people, because it's going to make such a big difference. So if it's possible, always try to hire excellent people. And always also try to find people who fit the culture. As I told you, our culture was very special. And somehow it doesn't work if you find people who are good in what they do, but they have a completely different mindset. So we had some people, for example, who were who had grown up in big corporations, and they came in and they put a lot of value on hierarchy and always tried to emphasize their position and go official ways to speak with other business units and so on, and that proved to be very difficult. So it also has to fit the company culture. And there are also people who have excellent grades in university, but they're completely unimaginative. They have no ideas, and these are also the wrong people, at least for that kind of product that we did. Outsourcing. Outsourcing is not wrong by itself. It can be successful, but if you do outsourcing like we did, we outsourced some of the development to Ukraine. You have to know that you have to specify a lot. So the people that we had there were very capable, but there was a lot of overhead in communication, because we had to tell them basically everything. That was not the case with our team in Berlin, because the people spoke to each other across all business units, and the marketing people went to drink a beer with the developers and so on, and everybody knew what the others were doing. But if you have an outsourcing partner somewhere in Ukraine, people simply don't know that, because they have no chance to know that, and you have to tell them everything they need to know, and that's a big overhead that you have later on in management. And it's also, we found that, at least for our company, it's not a good way to plan everything top-down. When we got managers from outside later who came in, they had the idea that we should have some product management and we should have some people who only think about how the product should be like, and then the developers should only build it, and not only this creates overhead as well, also it loses, or it makes you lose a lot of potential, because also developers might have excellent ideas that product managers wouldn't get because they come from a different background. And if these people are only supposed to develop, there's no way how they can introduce their ideas into the product. So I think you have to find a balance and not make it too structured. You need some processes if the company grows, but if you can make it simple, it's always, or almost always, a good idea to keep it simple. And I also learned that these complicated processes can waste a lot of time. We were facing challenges when we grew because we simply were so many people, and it's hard to get everything in one boat and heading in one direction. So we looked at different philosophies how to manage that, and some consultant came up with the Rational Unified Process, RUP, and told us that would be a way to manage the company. But we figured out that if you have, well, one meeting to introduce something, and then you get a go, and then you write a proposal, and then you have another meeting, and then you write a specification, and somebody else is going to review that, and then it goes to a third party, and then, well, that takes a lot of time. And we found that, at least for our company, it was not necessary to be that complex, and we found a good way in between. And you probably have some kind of KPIs, some kind of metrics. If you do, make sure that you measure good things. So for example, registered users are not a good metric because they don't tell you anything about activity. Page impressions are not a good metric because with Ajax and all the new technologies, you can get a lot of activity that doesn't cause page impressions. So don't optimize towards the wrong metric. And don't let anybody tell you something is impossible, because we did some things that everybody was telling us was impossible. If you believe something can work, then just try it. Yeah, and I also told you, try to focus and don't do too much. So don't only decide what you want to do, but also make a decision about what you don't want to do, because you cannot do everything. And many people, many entrepreneurs, simply try to do too many things at once because they think, well, it just takes a little extra work and we can have all these big benefits and so on. And often people just underestimate all the work. Yeah, well, we sold the company to Holzbrink, a big media company in Germany. I'm not supposed to disclose the purchase price because it's confidential, as it's always the case. I was very surprised to find it in the media a few hours later, and the numbers also changed over the course of hours. That was also interesting because in the first 2 hours or so after the news was out, there were reports in the media between 12 million and 160 million, and then they narrowed down. And I found it interesting that even even newspapers with a big reputation corrected these numbers in an article. They had an article and they wrote, it's 120 million, and half an hour later you would look at the same article and it would suddenly be 100 million, and they didn't even know that they changed it, they simply did. So that was very strange to see, and I wondered where they had these numbers from. Holzbrink disclosed at some point that the price was in the upper two-digit million range, so that's all, which is really confirmed information. So when we sold the company, of course, there were many parties that were interested in purchasing, and that took a while. that's also good for the purchase price if you have many parties that are interested. And when finally the lawyers were ready and they said, okay, we can sign a contract, they called us and they told us we have to come to Munich. And then we discovered that the proxies that we had from the other business angels had the wrong date on them, because they were valid until the end of January, but it said in the proxies January 2006 because it was 2006, but we meant it to be January 2007. Somebody made a mistake, so we discovered the proxies are not valid and we cannot use them to sell the company. So I stayed in Berlin and I tried to reach all our business angels that were somewhere skiing in the Alps, and I told them get a helicopter or whatever, but just sign a new proxy for us. While my co-founders went to Munich, and they didn't have time to shower, that's what they told me at least, and they're dressed in just regular clothes, no suits, and they came to that lawyer's office and they rang the bell, and the guy at the reception said, so, you have an appointment? Could you please wait outside? But finally they were let in, and everybody was stunned at that appearance because all the people were dressed very formally. And then Martin Weber of Hotspring Networks told all the assembled crowd, if you're in this business, you have to look like that. And then we signed the contracts. And by the way, I told you about Aaron Dessauer, that fastest student of Germany. He also heard of us then, and he got about €500,000 from the transaction. And then he called me and he said, now I know what you mean, it's not like a savings account. What has changed since then? Well, the CEO has changed 4 times, which is a lot in a short time. Also, the CTO has been changed by the new shareholders. And I discovered that when I talk to people now who work at VZ, there are more and more people with impressive degrees, but maybe less creativity and less ideas. And I find that's a bit sad to see. And this mentality that we had in the beginning is slowly fading. We were trying to keep everything simple, to keep the product very focused, and now we have lots of different information in the product, and this chaos is also disappearing. So that's a bit sad to see, and I'm curious where the company is heading. And we're often asked, after we give a presentation, what do you do these days? My co-founder Michael, for example, he became a full-time business angel. I also invested in all kinds of startups, but I discovered that I don't like that kind of work so much because it's a lot about contracts and legal stuff, and simply that's no fun for me. Michael is a guy who really likes that, and he also did some operative things in a company which is similar to the Groupon model, and he invested in Groupon-like companies all over the world. It's pretty interesting to see. For example, I traveled a lot. Last year I had one of these round the world tickets, and I went to Japan and Tanzania and South Africa. I climbed Kilimanjaro. I went to Argentina, learned some tango. So pretty interesting. I also like to learn languages. Next January I'm going to Thailand again to learn some more Thai. I already did a 1-week course, and I think it's pretty easy to learn. I'm doing a lot of photography now. I started with traveling photography. Now I just, on last week Friday, I had my first fashion shooting with professional makeup artists and hairstylists and agency models and so on for a local designer in Berlin that sells designer collections. It's pretty interesting to do. And I'm also trying to do more music, playing piano and synthesizers. And at some point I also have to write my thesis because I basically dropped out of university in 2005, and the thesis was everything that was missing because I had passed all my exams. But then I founded that company, and now my professors and my grandparents are telling me you have to write that thesis. So I think at some point I have to do it. And probably in the long run I'm also going to start a new project. I don't know yet what it is. I have some ideas what I want to do, but I will know that when the time is right. And I figured out that I'm probably not so much of a guy that works in a big corporation. I'm more a startup guy, and I have to do my own thing. So that's all. If you have more questions, go ahead. Thank you.
thanks, Denis. I think we can take one question, then we're going to go to the next panel, which is Women 2.0. So let's go. That helped us solve the technical issue. But you need to speak into the microphone, or else it won't be recorded.
They don't hear me.
No. You need to speak into the microphone.
I will.
Hi Denis, that was a great talk. Thank you very much. Very inspiring. I have a few questions. I'll try to kind of bundle them together because we only have one question. So mainly this is all related with the part where you mentioned that about the company is heading towards having more managers, more structured, that is kind of doing more stuff. And this is kind of happening since you left the company, really, or you sold the company maybe. So I would say, my question would be, has the product changed? Or I would say, would you feel it's now worse than it was when it was more chaotic? And now that it's more ordered, do you feel that the product is not adding that much value? That even though we have this big structure, everything is there in place, in theory, there should be more productivity or something. Do you feel that it is happening like that?
Well, it's always a balance. So if you change something, it introduces good things and bad things. I think it made everything more more foreseeable or more predictable, which is maybe important for such a shareholder who pays a lot of money for such a company. And of course, it's valid if they want to introduce these changes. I think that we were more innovative in the beginning when everything was more chaotic, and I heard from many people who worked there in the beginning and who now just quit the company that the whole spirit has changed, and the culture was so great, and everybody told us, I've never seen a company like that, and that it was so much fun to work there, and now it's just another big company, and it's not so much fun anymore. And I think that's also a very important factor, because if people enjoy what they're doing, they automatically do better work. And we still have to wait to see what the users are saying about it. But I think that we were pretty successful with the chaotic approach, so that proved it right. And of course you can change things, but you will see later on where it's heading.
Thank you.
Okay, well with that, thank you, Denis. Denis will be around for another hour or so in case you have any questions.